All right, we're going to continue with our Bible notes in Genesis 1:2. That reads, "The earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters." Okay, so let's take a look at that first bit there. Formless and void. What is that talking about? That's talking about what the earth was like before God really did anything to it. It isn't saying that the earth was a chaotic place necessarily, but rather that the earth had a shape, and God was still applying creation to it. And it's also notable here that before light is created, earth is formed. That's important because a lot of early religions focused on light as the sun being God. So to put the earth being formed before light is to say that earth came before whatever false gods those people had. This bit, formless and void, it also is interesting when it comes to say the idea that Earth had evolution or didn't have evolution, and where humanity comes in, and where God comes in to creation. I don't know for sure if evolution happened or not. But what I can say is that it's entirely reasonable for God to use evolution and then say, create the world 100 million years in, so that there's already bones in the ground. He could already create the world with bones in the ground. Maybe dinosaurs never walked the earth. Maybe God created Earth after dinosaurs and put the bones there because it's the logical progression of where Earth went. I don't know. But we can leave that up to God. It is a secondary matter. It's irrelevant to us. It really doesn't matter one way or the other. Looking at my notes. Now, the words formless and void. In Hebrew, there's some symmetry and rhyming going on, which usually indicates that the words might be considered more as poetry rather than prose. So it is entirely possible that to say formless and void is like a verse, rather than like the actuality of what was there. But we could just take it at face value. Now the next phrase, darkness was over the surface of the deep. So let's go ahead and read the whole verse again. The earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. All right, so what does that mean? Darkness was over the surface of the deep. Well, darkness throughout the Old Testament and New Testament is seen as absence of God, such that God can be signified in the idea of light, so that the presence of God is light and the absence of God is darkness. So to say over the surface of the deep is just saying that there was a void, referring again to that earlier phrase, formless and void. So God was over the earth, over the shape of the earth, whether or not there was an earth there or not yet. God was there and it was dark. So God was working in the darkness. And that kind of gives a little shift, I guess, where you could say that since God was before the light, his glory is its own light before anything else. Okay. All right. So then let's take a look at Isaiah 5:30, which gives a little bit more, expands on this a little bit more. And it will growl over it in that day like the roaring of the sea. If one looks to the land, behold, there is darkness and distress. Even the light is darkened by its clouds. Now that's almost completely irrelevant except to showcase that darkness and distress are often together throughout the Bible. Okay. So the absence of God can be seen as sin or calamity in that sense. Now, the next phrase, the Spirit of God. So the earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. What is the Spirit of God here? It can be understood as just God or Jesus or the Holy Spirit. I personally understand this to mean the Holy Spirit, specifically because it uses the word spirit. And it's not necessarily saying that God was on earth or above earth, but metaphorically, maybe God's presence was near what might be considered the presence of earth, to like above. Okay, and so then when you see the Holy Spirit acting here in Genesis 1:2, you're going from God to the Holy Spirit, and then later on we get to Jesus. So you see the whole Trinity all the way at the beginning of the Bible, which is pretty awesome. Okay. All right. So the whole Trinity acted in the creation of the world. So Genesis 1:1 has God created. Genesis 1:2 has the Holy Spirit. And then later on in the New Testament, in John 1:1, it opens with, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the Word that John is talking about is Jesus. So Jesus was in the beginning, and he was present for all of creation. Okay? Now moving on to the next and final phrase here, moving over the surface of the waters. So God was moving over the surface of the waters. Why was he doing that? I think it's maybe simple enough to say that God was moving over the surface of the waters in the sense that he was imbuing it with his presence. He was creating as he went. It's the same. It's just to say God went there and did something. The idea of water in the Bible, in the waters, the further down in the water you go, the darker it gets. So it's kind of that same idea of darkness, where the waters are seen as calamity or as distance from God. So, like, say in the book of Jonah, you see Jonah going away from God to the sea, and then calamity strikes, and then he ends up back to land doing what God wanted him to do. Okay, so that gets us through Genesis 1:2.